Let's hear.
Yes, on.
Welcome again to another class. So we are going to just have a quick example of baby step, giant step. So I just put here to remember, but we are going to do some practical example where P equals 17. Our generator is G. It's 3. So we are going to be nice and give over the order of 3, 16, and we want to find some let's call n equals 5. So that is G to something equals 5 mod 17, of course. So we know G, that's 3, but we want to find A. So the first step, it's not there, but I think you should saw in the last class, we need to compute the M. Tanja usually use M equal square root of this, of the order. So it's in fact the floor of this. So in our case it's 4, right? So let's start doing. The first step is compute the babe step. That is I. So we are going to do for 0, 1, and 3. So 3 to 0, 1, 3 to 1, 3. Well, that was difficult to compute. And 3 to 3, it's going to be, oh, sorry, it's 2, and then 3. So 3 to the power of 2, 9, and 3 to 3, it's going to be passing the thing, like passing our P, and then you need to do the mod, and then you are going to have 10. Okay, so we compute our babe step table, let's say like this. The second step in the algorithm is to, okay, now we have some tricks. If you're implementing a computer, you just order all this by this value, because you are going to use later, so it's going to be easier. For our lucky, it's already organized in a way that it's easy to read, also because there is a table and it's smaller. So the second step is to compute the inverse of G, where M is the exponent. So we have like, I'm going to put here 3 to minus 4. You can use whatever you want to compute this. I mean, you have ways to compute this. I'm going to give direct the answer. It's 4, if I'm not wrong. No, I'm not wrong, because it's here. So now we are going to compute the giant step. So for the giant step, it's computing our n. That's our G to power of A times H that we just compute here. It's 4. That's H. So I'm going to do here. So J and what I'm finding. So I'm going to call this here.
The receipt will follow because they have a system.
we should this for m plus 1 step if you don't have any match. If you have, I think now it's better to see. If you have some match with this, you find your A, or almost find your A. You just need to do one more computation and you find your A. So let's just do so. For j equals 0, that's going to be 1. That's going to be 5. So 5. We just look, there is any GI that it's match? No. So unfortunately, we don't have this. So for the second case, we are going to have H4. So power of 1, 20, because this is 5, 20, mod 17, it's 3. And we have a match. So faster in this case. So we just need to return I plus mj, and we are going to have our A. So if you just compute this, it's 1. Sorry? It's 5. So you can just check doing 3 to the power of 5. That's going to be 5 mod p. So that's how you do. I mean, yes?
How do you get to the H first thing?
To the H?
Yeah, because in last lecture there was like H is g to the minus m.
Yep.
But there are different.
That's the m.
Oh,
So g to the minus m. Just this. And okay, in this case was pretty fast because first it's a small number, but usually it takes square root of m of storage at least, because here, I mean, plus some other things here. And also you're going to need something like square root of m steps to find this. In the master level, if you go there for cryptology, you're going to see that it's possible to do some factoring or some solving the DLP in square root of m steps, and using no storage. But it's another thing more advanced using index calculus. So that's how you usually do it. Any questions about this? About the babe step, giant step? I know that my handwriting, it's not Tanja's, it's worst. Yes, it can be possible. Oh, now I just remember, it's recording. Oh. So, if you have any questions about this, please just feel free. It's not so, it looks like very easy, but when you are going to apply, it's not so easy because sometimes you have like big numbers, and usually there is a confusion about when you should stop or something like this. If you go to like the internet, you're going to see even like other letters as attribution, and it could be like confused. For example, they use like age for other things, or instead of age, it's R, and then you could like just be a little bit confused. Okay, if no one, okay, question.
So you use g to the power a to find a.
Yes, it's because you don't know a, you just know g, and you know that's this. It's 5.
It's given.
It's given. I mean, That's why you're like computing the previous or the last exercise from the exercise list or the Diffie-Hellman. When you have when you have something like you have like ls and then G2A, and you don't see this, you just see a number here. For example, in this case, you see 5.
Yeah. Okay.
And of course, we gave the prime field like P17, and because this is public, also the generator tree is public. The order, it's easy to compute, even for big numbers. And then you just have like 5 and you want to find that value. So with no more questions, we are going to practical problems when you are going to do Diffie-Hellman. And we can use this. I mean, I think Tanja explained Diffie-Hellman for you and how it's done. So anyone can think in a very nice attack or how you can, I mean, watch Bob and Alice talking, or so we have Alice. Okay, sorry, I need to just Alice, and we have Bob. So they are like assuming a lot of stuff that's secure. I mean, they're assuming that where they are secure. But what happens if there is some, let's call P as a professor, that it's looking this. So Alice and Bob are looking like, hey, we are safe, we can talk, let's just exchange keys. But Alice just sent something to here. And this guy looked, okay, I can just compute my own and send to this guy. And then Bob like, okay, so it's Alice that's trying to talk to me. So I'm just going send back. And this guy like creates this on generator, everything, and Alice thinks, yes, it's safe. It's Bob. So, and this guy is like looking all the transactions and all the messages and everything else. Because he knows like and then he has like G of B. Let's call G of B. And these guys, and then he just sent back this. Yeah. So Tanja is here now.
Hey,
so yes.
right in the middle, as you expected.
Yes. So that's one thing. It's not safe anymore. There is someone looking here. In this case, the professor is looking here. See? We had a secure channel, and now we have like the man in the middle. Woman or man. I mean, okay, that's not being sexist. It's because it's the literature that says it's a man. But it also could be like just let's say some agency. That's NSA or something, BSI in Germany. I think in, which one is in Netherlands?
AI today.
Which one?
AI today.
Oh.
AI.
AID. Okay. So, or them. So they could do this. Because there is no authentication. I mean, you are assuming that Bob is Bob and that Alice is Alice. But what happens if they're like just passing for other people? And well, now Tanja should start doing this. And she just left. Nice. You can think like, hey, I can just, oh, that's nice up here then. We can do some some hash or something, but even this doesn't matter. I mean, you can just send to this guy literally just, okay, I receive, I'm going to look, change a little bit and send to Bob, and Bob wait, and do this. So that's one attack. And that's why we have the static, or I think it's semi-static. Yes. Semi-static Diffie-Hellman. The semi-static Diffie-Hellman, it's the same thing as Diffie-Hellman. However, now Alice has a long-term key, a long-term PK. So I'm going to say that Alice has this. That's safe in some way, and Alice also has a certificate, and the certificate, it's like saying, yes, it's Alice. And even this, it could say like, hey, someone could overdraft, could just look or change this. But that's one thing, we really believe that it's the certificate because it's a trusted party. I mean, you can see in a real world application, when you're like talking with a server, when you're like buying some stuff online, why it's like the green lock on your screen. Because that certificate was given for that website, everything matched. So if you are going to like ball, you know that's ball because someone certified for them and you can check. So in case, this is our Alice, and we guys are Bob. So we do the same thing, but now we have like the third party that say, yes, it's Alice, yes, it's Bob. That's semi-static Diffie-Hellman. Yeah, I don't put here, but I should start writing, right?
You don't want to write, I can write.
Yes, okay.
I'll finish one sentence.
Okay, so I think Tanya is going to probably explain again this, because I was missing some details. Not important, believe me. Also, please don't see the videotape again, because I screw up. You're going to have a nice recording for the ceiling. Yes.
Well, the voice is there.
Yeah, that's the problem too. But I think, yeah. So we have more about the communication from the Bob side here.
Hey, round of applause for Gustavo. Thank you.
Oh, it's in the ward upstairs.
All right. Sorry for being late, and please pay extra scrutiny to whatever I'm writing today, because when you go for these nice mass ceremonies, you have to do a picture with a glass of champagne. So, lecturing under the influence. So here we go. So I'm not sure I would pull off this attack today, because you would totally notice it's me rather than the Bob.
Bye.
Thanks. See ya. Okay, so semi-static Diffie-Hellman, Alice has invested in having a long-term key, and only then it makes sense to have actually paid for a certificate. I mean, the way that we taught Diffie-Hellman, it's Alice and Bob do a one-time A and B, and forget about it. You don't want to do like a one-time certificate. You don't want to each time pay 16 euros in order to get this signed by somebody else. So one possibility is you get a long-term certificate, say an RSA key, like RSA signature that we have, and then sign with the RSA key your temporary G to the A. And then it's reasonable. Or semi-static Diffie-Hellman, so this comes in, so that means A keeps little a, and so that's the secret key. And she has this public key, which is G to the A. She keeps this for a longer time. And the reasons for this could be either she actually did invest something in getting a certificate on that, or also computational efficiency. So I would say by now all the protocols, all the cryptography that we have, whether it's Diffie-Hellman-Defined fields or elliptic curves, is efficient enough that you could just do per connection. Back in late 70s, it was really hard to do those computations even at all. So if you wanted to do like a 1000-bit computation, that took a while. Nowadays, well, she might keep it just because the program is configured like this. For instance, there's something called caching. And that happens in the network protocol that we all use behind HTTP. So that's TLS. TLS has the possibility to use keys for a longer period. It says ephemeral, but ephemeral does not mean one times. It means sort of temporary, it means sort of in passing. I mean, the English word ephemeral means that. But it doesn't say one-time keys. So it could be a few-time keys. So ephemeral does imply temporary. But it doesn't mean one time. So examples that I have seen, for instance, if you're using the Microsoft library, so I don't know how many of you have a server. I'm sure that each of you have a client, like a laptop is connected to, or your cell phone is connected to web pages, but some of you might also be hosting web pages. And then some of you just use whatever the hosting provider offers. You subscribe to having this data volume for a few euros, 50 per month. But maybe some of you also have a computer sitting somewhere that is your server, and then you run the software yourself. And when you run the server side, you're making decisions about what your server, say Alice, is doing. Is Alice making new secrets each time, or is it keeping them around for a while? One library which is, well, maybe more popular among companies than among students is the Microsoft's S-channel. And so S-channel has a typical setting of 2 hours. You would need to dig deeply into the code. I'm not even sure this is like user-defined. I think this is actually defined by Microsoft. It's just sitting around there for 2 hours. Back in the day, this made sense because it was expensive. Nowadays, it doesn't make sense. The Microsoft research people are a little bit embarrassed when I told them, hey, your own product is keeping the keys around. But then again, the key sizes we're using, we expect to be putting a lot of effort on the attacker. I was showing you Babystep Giant Step in theory last time. Gustavo now gave you an example. And I said, this is about the best attack we have. Not really for the fine fields case, but for the elliptic curve case. And that means there isn't really much attacker can do. So if you put the Diffie-Hellman, well, if you put the Babystep Giant Step at something like 2028, you can keep using this key forever. Or at least until quantum computers exist. So there is no problem in caching the key, unless you're concerned about other things that are not the math or the crypto of it. So keeping keys around is a problem if you're concerned about like law enforcement knocking down your door and saying, give me your key. If you're using one-time keys, you don't have that key anymore. This was a key you used 10 minutes ago to talk to Bob. You don't have this key anymore. And I mean, I was making similar comments about the OTR thing, that maybe it's a little bit hard to explain to a judge all the little details about having published the MAC key and whatever, but I think the I don't have the key anymore, it's automatically erased argument is actually something functional. Of course, then you might get an order that the next time you don't delete the key, so for the future, they might be able to spy on you. But all the past conversations are safe the moment that you delete your key. So it doesn't mean one time. So it's good to delete keys. Good to refresh keys. Well, I just described the somebody forces you to now give up your key and maybe always copy them to the key or something, but they cannot get into past conversation, is something called about forward secrecy. From the moment that there's a breach onwards, it's all broken, but nothing backwards. So good to refresh key for no space in this one, right? Maybe I'll wait a moment so that I can move the blackboard. That's good for forward secrecy. So all past conversations are secure if the key is forgotten. And when people mention forward secrecy, it is kind of confusing as a name. It seems like something that protects you towards the future rather than that it protects you back. It's just a name that came up, so we prefer to use key freshness. So it's a much better term. It actually describes what we have here. You make a fresh key whenever you think it's necessary. So better term is key freshness. Okay, now why then people still think about the semi-static Diffie-Hellman? Why do they have this hashing in there? It's not the computational power. It's the time for connections. So if you follow any of the discussions about new TLS protocols, so TLS is currently moving on to version 1.3. Okay, apparently 1.1, 1.2 weren't good enough, which is true. Actually, 1.0 to 1.2 were kind of okay. Everything before that was real crap. And one of the features that they're introducing now is the ability to do session resumption. So let's assume that your smartphone has talked to Google 5 minutes ago. Then you got distracted doing something else, and now you want to talk to Google again. Now Google probably doesn't remember your smartphone. I mean, the way they set it up is like Alice and Bob talk, then you get your shared Diffie-Hellman secret key, you do the hash function, and now you have a symmetric key. Google will have forgotten that symmetric key. And that's reasonable. I mean, they have so many people to talk to, I mean, so many devices that talk to it, they will keep it open for some short time, but 5 minutes is certainly past the timeout. Now, how far back do you have to go? Do you have to go back all the way to saying Google, hey, I want to talk to you, please send me your Google share, and by the way, here's my Bob share? Or can you just assume that the Google share is still functional, just optimistically take the G to the A, server share, and pick a fresh randomness, or pick the same randomness, doesn't really matter, and send them something in this direction. So session resumption and the prime example, if you want to Google for this, is called Quick, and that's getting in TLS 1.3. Is the client resumes a conversation, well, conversation, connection, whatever. Yeah, connections make better. Connection, assuming that the server share or the server public key, this G to the A, is still valid. But that this hash, so that you have your shared symmetric key, which was the hash of G to the AB, is forgotten. So what the client does is just sends, again, G to the B or G to the B prime to the same G. So client sends now some package which is G to the B prime and the encryption of the next message under some key K prime, where this key prime is using the previous G to the A. Okay, so then I should say encryption and a MAC, of course. Never do anything without a MAC. I just keep not putting it there. The MAC is actually important in this case. So now Google is running quick. So Google says, yes, I will keep my keys around for a little while, but you don't know when it forgets them. So you optimistically send such a thing. If the A is still valid, if Google still remembers the little a, then Google will compute the same K prime, and then the MAC will work out. If the MAC works out, then Google can decrypt this encryption. If Google has changed to another A, say there's now the temporary key G to the A prime, then Google computes a different key here. It has G to the A prime to the B prime, gets some K, looks at the authentication value and goes like, nah, this is false. This is not a valid MAC. And if you then have indicated that you want to speak this quick protocol so that this is a session resumption, then it will say, well, my answer is G to the A prime. So then you're back to the first step of this protocol that Google tells you, this is my current share, and then you, Bob, have to do this computation again with a new share. But most of the time, this is good. Now, it's not the computation power, but you have saved one round trip. You have saved waiting for Alice's G to the A, which you normally get by saying, hi, I'm Bob, I want to talk to you. So you're saving the time to send to Google, and you're saving the time from Google back to you. And by now we are in a phase where our computation power is so high that it's really usually a network that limits our communication. I mean, sometimes you do notice this latency. Say you're somewhere in the forest and you try to use your smartphone and it doesn't really connect. Or you're riding the Dutch trains and there's some glimpse of internet. It's not the real internet, but it's enough of an internet that you keep going and wasting the hour that you have on it. But it's not the real internet. It takes a long time. And then you actually notice how long it takes to make a connection, because first it has to get from you to Google, then from Google back to you, and then from you to Google. So out of those 3 pings, only 1 is necessary to have session resumption. So that's a motivation to keep keys around for a bit longer. And then what we have as the attack problem, or what the protocol is, that one side is static, Bob will always choose a fresh B, but Alice has this thing sitting around for a bit longer. Again, we don't have anything that attacks Diffie-Hellman on the computational side that wouldn't go via the discrete log problem. So we don't really have any groups where CDH is weaker than DDH, than DLP. DDH can be weaker. Okay, this is inexcusable, but I also don't want to wipe at this point, so I will continue writing here. So, remove the professor's attack a little bit here. So let me see. I made those notes for Gustavo yesterday, but I need to check. Oh yeah, for this thing I was briefly out, but I should say, I mean, he probably said this whole thing. If there's not a signature on it, a MAC doesn't help you. So he might have said this, but didn't write it, so let me write this here so it's at least safe for posterity on the screen, in the photo. So note, a MAC doesn't save you. A MAC helps you if you know some other end and you want to protect against somebody flipping bits. But here, Alice and apparently evil professor are talking, and they have a shared key. And the evil professor and Bob are talking, and they have a shared key. So for both sides, the evil professor can present a valid map. Because the evil professor has all the secrets. All the evil professor needs to do is re-encrypt and re-MAC at this point. So Alice sends something to evil professor decrypts, well, should also verify the MAC, then re-encrypts and adds a MAC. P decrypts, re-encrypts, and adds a valid MAC for the other side. And if this is a good enough internet connection, Alice and Bob will not notice this. Encryption, decryption are fast enough, internet delays are so big that whatever time it takes, the professor in the middle will not be noticeable unless Alice and Bob are really sitting next to each other and suddenly they find their conversation rerouted. Now such a thing makes it very interesting to see news items such as, oops, suddenly all internet traffic was routed via Russia. Had that like a week ago. Suddenly some BGP tables were not actually showing what they should be showing, so that's the routing information. And then instead of sending from Alice in Eindhoven to Bob in Amsterdam, it was, well, Alice to Moscow to Amsterdam. Now, if your certificates are fine, this is not a problem. It's a nuisance, but it's irritating. If you do this without certificates, if you do this with HTTPS, without the S in HTTPS, just with HTTP, then they can insert whatever they have if this is tunneled past you. So in principle, there are several defense layers on the internet in that it should go some reasonable way, but you can't rely on that. You need to have some cryptographic insurance. Okay, so semi-static, that's fine. So, next up, all right. So when we go back in time, I was saying Diffie-Hellman 76 came up with the concept of public key cryptography. Then they described this key exchange, which is something we're still using now. But it wasn't actually a success. They actually wanted to have encryption. They were very unhappy because, well, it was just a key exchange. Some years later, ElGamal developed an encryption system which is based on the discrete log problem. Well, in the end, the security is the same as the Diffie-Hellman problem, we'll see. And that then basically finally was, oh, we have an encryption based on discrete logs. We have moved on from that. Nowadays, we don't want to have an encryption system. We want to have something which transports a key. I'll give the proper definitions of what a key transport or key encapsulation mechanism is after the break. For the next few minutes, I'll describe some scheme for you which is, well, historically interesting. Same way that schoolbook RSA is interesting because we can come up with attacks and using properties, but it's not interesting in the sense that you should use it. Unless, again, you have reasons to do so. If you want to use RSA and you actually want to use the homomorphic property that you can multiply ciphertext and thereby multiply the encryptions, and thereby have the encryption of the product of ciphertext, then this is what you want. Normally you don't. Similar with ElGamal, you do have some such properties. Normally you don't want those, so stay away. But we just showed this here. So ElGamal, encryption, and again, warning schoolbook method. Okay, so we have a key generation, which just looks like everything else we've seen so far in discrete logs. So we have the secret key is little a, if the public key is G to the A. Then we have the encryption function. And in principle, encryption is the same as we have here with the Diffie-Hellman. So if you see G to the A, this actually needs an A here as well. Alice and the other communicating side can always compute this value. Yeah?
Oh, it is a P, not an A then.
Oh, that's... No, this should be G to the A and then it should be J to the AP. This is J to the AB. Maybe it should be a little p, which is the same as maybe the big P to the A. Is this what you mean?
No, what is the big P then?
I don't know what the big P is. I thought it was the...
Yeah,
capital A has little a as key. Capital P has little p as key.
Yeah, so it was G to the little p,
Yeah, so it's...
I think.
Oh, she only sends one of them. Okay, sorry, yes. So the professor sends but one of them, and then they both have G to the AP.
Yeah.
This is sending G to the B, and they both have G to the AB. Okay, now, fine. I want to put my finger on G to the AB. So this is something Alice can compute from G to the B, and Bob, your professor, can compute from G to the A. So to encrypt, we first assume, and this is also one of the reasons why we don't really like using this, we assume that our message is a fine field element. It's kind of okay, you have some binary representation, you look at this binary representation as an integer, so you require an integer less than p. You have seen more general fields when we did the LFSR, so you've seen f2 to the n. If it's a binary field, you have a very easy translation of these binary polynomials to bit strings, to integers, so yeah, we can make this work. This becomes really nasty if your group changes to something else. So in the master's course where you didn't look to curves, this is actually a tricky thing. A message is not really a point on look to curve. So back then, when ElGamal made this, the only group that people considered was this, so kind of okay. So let's assume that our element is there. Then we're picking some k, or ephemeral key, and we're computing, let's call this thing h, which is, oh no, I want to have this called r for later. R is G to the k, and we're computing the encryption, well, we're computing the ciphertext, which is Alice's public key to this k. So here we now have our Diffie-Hellman shared secret. Well, no hash function around it, because we want to stay in the same group. And then we multiply by m. Okay? And so then we send, we need to send both of those, we're sending R, comma, C. And then the decryption, we're getting some, let's call this m prime because we're not sure yet that it's the right message. What we're taking is, we're taking the ciphertext, and we're dividing this by R to the A. All right, let's be brave, let's just plug in everything we have. So C was Alice's public key to the power k times m divided by R to the A. Now R, that was G to the k, so we now have an A here. And then finally, the public key, that's defined up there. We just find some other color. This thing here, so is G to the A, K. So this is also G to the A, K. So both the numerator and the denominator have this G to the A, K. So these two cancel. And so what we're left with is M. So we're actually getting the right message out of the decryption. still have 1 minute, that should be enough for you to break it. So we have seen CCA security, where you can ask the oracle any question except for the real thing. So what would you like to send me instead of the RC so that you can break it? And it only needs to be different in one of the arguments. Just the only thing, I'm a stupid oracle, all I will do is either give you the decryption or say, no, this is the same RC and I can't answer you. Come on, yes, it's Thursday afternoon, but you have a multiplication by m there. You see that? There's a lot of math structure. It's just multiplying by m. Ask me some other C. Yeah?
And you can add two ciphertexts and then it decrypts to the sum of the two plaintext.
I can. You're already getting into fancy properties of homomorphic things. Yes, we can do that as well. But all I'm saying here is you can break this, but maybe we should do this after the break. You can break this in a model where I'll be willing to answer any query other than this one query. Cool. Let's do a break first till 4:45, and then we'll go back to attacking this.